She was just a cleaning lady, invisible to the millionaire's eyes. But when she spoke German on the phone, he became intrigued. The next day, she was called into the president's office, and what happened inside would change everything forever. Emily adjusted her badge on the navy blue uniform as she pushed the cleaning cart down the hallway of the 12th floor of the Palace International Hotel. Her hands, protected by rubber gloves, gripped the chrome metal of the cart firmly, as if seeking some kind of support for her increasingly distant dreams. The clock showed 3:45 p.m., and she still needed to clean 3 executive suites before the end of her shift. With a degree in international relations from the University of Miami, Emily carried in her bag, hidden in the employee locker, much more than cleaning products. Between the pages of her German notebooks, she also kept last month's overdue bills and a proficiency certificate in 3 languages that, so far, hadn't opened any doors for her in the job market. "Another day, another battle," she murmured, to herself in German, a habit she had developed to practice the language during the long work hours. Mrs. Martha, the hotel housekeeper, was passing by at that moment and rolled her eyes when she heard her. "Emily, still with that habit? I don't know why you waste time studying that impossible language. You should focus on saving some money, girl. Dreaming too much only brings frustration," commented the housekeeper, adjusting her own impeccable uniform. Emily smiled politely, already accustomed to the comments. "Everyone has their own way of persisting, Mrs. Martha. This is mine." Entering the first suite, Emily began her meticulous routine. While changing towels and organizing the bathroom amenities, her mind wandered to the German class she would have that night. 3 years of self-taught study, saving every possible penny to pay for private lessons with Professor Walker, a retired German gentleman who had been enchanted by her dedication. The sound of her cell phone vibrating in her uniform pocket interrupted her thoughts. Normally she wouldn't answer during her shift, but seeing Professor Walker's number flashing on the screen made her heart race. She had taken the German proficiency exam the previous week, and the results weren't out yet. "Guten Tag, Professor." "Walker," she answered in a low voice, trying to contain her anxiety. The professor's cheerful voice on the other end of the line made her eyes water. "Emily, meine beste Schülerin, congratulations. You achieved the maximum score on the proficiency exam. Your German is impeccable, worthy of a native speaker." Emily covered her mouth with her hand, trying to contain a cry of joy. 3 years of dedication, sleepless nights studying after classes, weekends practicing conjugations while others were having fun. It had all been worth it. "Danke schön, Professor, ich kann es nicht glauben," she exclaimed in German, momentarily forgetting where she was. Her voice echoed down the luxurious corridor, reverberating between walls decorated with Italian wallpaper. It was at that moment she noticed a presence. A tall man in an impeccable suit was standing at the door of the suite, observing her with a curious expression. Emily froze, immediately recognizing Alexander Morgan, the owner of the Palace Hotel chain. Her heart raced, now for a completely different reason. "Professor, I need to hang up. Thank you so much for the news," she quickly finished, putting away her phone. "I apologize, Mr. Morgan, I shouldn't be on the phone during working hours," she said, lowering her eyes and turning her attention back to the cleaning cart. The businessman remained standing, his eyes fixed on her with disconcerting intensity. "You speak German?" he finally asked, his deep voice filling the silence of the corridor. "Yes, sir," Emily replied, feeling her cheeks burn. "I just received the result of my proficiency exam." Alexander Morgan took a step forward, his interest visibly piqued. "Interesting, very interesting. Please come to my office tomorrow at 9 a.m. Ask my secretary to announce you." Before Emily could respond, he had already turned and was walking toward the elevator, leaving her paralyzed, her heart pounding, and 1,000 questions in her head. What could a businessman of Alexander Morgan's stature want with a simple cleaner who spoke German? The day dawned with a different expectation for Emily. Wearing her only formal outfit, a black blazer bought on sale and basic dress pants, she crossed the hotel lobby with hesitant steps. It felt strange to be there without her navy blue uniform, as if she were invading territory that didn't belong to her. At the executive reception on the 20th floor, Alexander Morgan's secretary received her with barely disguised surprise. "Ms. Emily Sanders. Mr. Morgan will see you shortly," she informed, typing something on her computer with perfectly manicured nails. Seated in the waiting area, Emily observed the movement in the executive office. Executives in expensive suits entered and left the meeting rooms, conversing in various languages. This was the world she had always dreamed of being part of, for which she had prepared throughout her academic life. "Ms. Sanders, you may enter." The secretary's voice brought her back to reality. Alexander Morgan's office was an impressive combination of modernity and elegance. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city stretched out like a living canvas. The businessman was standing, observing the view, and turned when she entered. "Good morning, Emily. Please have a seat." He indicated one of the Italian leather armchairs in front of his desk. "Coffee?" "No, thank you, sir," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Alexander sat down and opened a folder on his desk. Emily recognized her resume and several other documents with her name. Graduated in International Relations from the University of Miami, internship at the German Embassy, volunteer work with refugees, fluent in English, French, Spanish, and now German, he read aloud. "Impressive. What is someone with these qualifications doing working as a cleaner in my hotel?" Emily took a deep breath before answering. "The reality of the job market doesn't always correspond to our qualifications, Mr. Morgan. Without contacts or references, doors remain closed, no matter how many diplomas or certificates we have." The businessman observed her for a few moments, a half-smile forming on his lips. "Do you know why I built this hotel empire, Emily? Because I've always known how to recognize potential where others see only circumstances. And yesterday, when I heard you speaking German in that corridor, I saw something rare. I saw someone who didn't let circumstances define their limits." He stood up, walking to a large digital screen on the wall. With a touch, an image of Boston appeared. "We're expanding the Palace network to Massachusetts. Our first international branch will be in Boston, in a historic 19th century building. I need someone who understands both the luxury we sell and the work necessary to create it. Someone who masters not only the language, but also the cultural sensitivity necessary for this project." Emily felt her heart accelerate, beginning to understand the direction of that conversation. "I'm offering you the position of executive assistant for international expansion," he continued, sitting back. "Down. You'll work directly with me on implementing this project. The package includes a salary compatible with the executive market, functional housing in Boston, and an international health plan." The silence that followed was deafening. Emily tried to process the magnitude of that proposal, while a persistent little voice in her head asked if this was real. "Why me?" she finally asked, her voice almost a whisper. Alexander smiled. "Because you have something that isn't learned in any university: resilience. While others gave up on their dreams, you continued studying German even while cleaning rooms. That tells me a lot about your character. Besides, you know this hotel inside and out, every detail that makes a difference in our guests' experience. That perspective is invaluable." He slid a contract across the desk. "So, what do you say? Are you ready to trade the cleaning cart for tickets to Boston?" Emily looked at the contract, her hands trembling slightly as she touched it. Years of frustration and perseverance converged to this moment, but before she could answer, a knock on the door interrupted the moment. Victoria Bennett, the senior European director of the chain, entered the room with her usual imposing presence. The look that the executive gave Emily was a mixture of surprise and disdain at seeing her sitting there on the other side of the president's desk. It was just a glimpse of what was to come, but Emily didn't know that yet. Emily's transformation began the day after signing the contract. The navy blue uniform was replaced by a complete executive wardrobe, courtesy of the palace's human resources department. As she looked at herself in the mirror of a luxury department store fitting room, accompanied by the company's image consultant, she barely recognized the woman staring back at her. "The power of a good tailored cut is extraordinary," commented Sophie, the consultant, adjusting the lapel of an emerald green blazer. "But remember, Emily, clothes are just the outer layer. Your true strength comes from the knowledge you've built all these years." Sophie's words echoed in her mind, as she participated in her first executive meeting, seated to the right of Alexander Morgan. In the meeting room, with a panoramic view of the city, high-ranking executives discussed the details of the expansion to Boston. Emily observed each presentation attentively, making meticulous notes on her new corporate tablet. "The building chosen in Boston presents significant challenges," explained one of the architects, showing images of a majestic 19th-century historic building. "American historic preservation laws are extremely rigorous." It was at this moment that Emily noticed Victoria Bennett's penetrating gaze upon her. The senior European director, with her 30 years of experience in the international hotel market, made no effort to hide her skepticism about the new hire. "Mr. Morgan," interrupted Victoria, her German accent more pronounced than usual, "considering the complexity of this project, wouldn't it be more prudent to assign someone with proven experience in the European market?" The silence that followed was heavy. All eyes turned to Emily, who felt her heart accelerate. But years of working behind the scenes at the hotel had taught her more than any MBA could about maintaining composure under pressure. "Frau Bennett." Emily responded in impeccable German, surprising everyone. "Allow me to share an interesting perspective. During my internship at the German embassy, I participated in a project to revitalize historic spaces to accommodate refugees. I learned that the secret isn't just knowing the regulations, but understanding the philosophy behind them." Turning to the projection screen, Emily began pointing out specific elements of the project. "The challenge isn't just preserving the physical structure, but keeping the soul of the building alive while adapting it for a new purpose. It's something I learned by observing every detail of the palace here in Miami, from the floor to the last chandelier." Alexander Morgan smiled discreetly, while Victoria adjusted her posture in the chair, visibly annoyed. The room seemed electrified with the tension of the moment. In the weeks that followed, Emily immersed herself in preparations for the move to Boston. During the day, she participated in video conferences with German authorities, studied architectural plans and reviewed contracts in 4 different languages. At night, in her small apartment, still surrounded by moving boxes, she meticulously studied the history of Boston and its cultural peculiarities. One afternoon, while organizing documents in her new office, she received an unexpected visit. Mrs. Martha, the housekeeper, knocked timidly at the door. "May I come in?" she asked, still seeming uncomfortable with Emily's new position. "Of course, Mrs. Martha. What a nice surprise," Emily smiled, genuinely happy to see her former supervisor. The housekeeper sat down, wringing her hands in her lap. "You know, Emily, I came to apologize for all the times I doubted your studies, that I said you were wasting time with German." Emily sat beside her, touched by the sincerity in her voice. "My daughter, Julie, she's been talking about wanting to study. Languages, too. After your story started circulating around the hotel, she doesn't talk about anything else, but you know our reality." It was at that moment that an idea began to form in Emily's mind, an idea that would transform not only her life, but that of many other people. However, before she could elaborate on her thoughts, her phone rang. It was from reception. "Miss Emily, there's an urgent delivery for you. Documents from Germany." Upon opening the envelope, Emily felt her blood freeze. These were the documents she had prepared for the crucial meeting with Boston's historic preservation authorities, but something was wrong. Important pages were missing, and others seemed to have been deliberately altered. Her gaze immediately went to the small seal in the lower right corner of one of the documents, Victoria Bennett's department. The covert war was just beginning, and Emily knew she would need much more than good German to survive in the international corporate world. The Boston airport welcomed Emily with its typical New England efficiency on a cold October morning. Carrying only a carry-on, the rest of her belongings would arrive in the coming days. She observed the electronic boards announcing flights in German and English, feeling the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. Her new functional apartment was in Beacon Hill, a charming neighborhood known for its artistic and university atmosphere. The modern flat contrasted with her old apartment in Miami suburbs, but Emily didn't have much time to admire the privileged view of Boston Common. A message on her corporate cell phone reminded her of the introductory meeting at the German branch in an hour. Wearing a navy blue tailored suit, Emily entered the imposing temporary office of Palace in Boston. The climate was notably different from Miami. The German employees greeted her with formal nods, but their gazes carried a mixture of curiosity and reserve. "Willkommen in Boston, Frau Sanders," Victoria Bennett's voice cut through the air like an ice blade. The senior director was standing at the door of her office, impeccable in a Chanel suit. "I hope you're prepared for our meeting with local authorities tomorrow. It would be regrettable if something went wrong." Emily maintained her professional smile, even feeling the venom in the executive's words. "Danke, Frau Bennett. I'm sure we'll work very well together." The introductory meeting was tense. Emily presented her credentials and her vision for the project, but noticed skeptical looks when she mentioned her previous experience at the hotel. A younger executive even whispered something to her colleague, provoking contained laughter. During the coffee break, Emily served herself coffee and observed the team dynamics. Victoria naturally commanded everyone's attention, years of networking and influence evident in every interaction. It was then that Emily overheard a snippet of conversation in German that she wasn't supposed to hear. "An American cleaner, Victoria." "Is right, this is an insult to our experience," commented one of the local managers. "They say she's having an affair with the owner," replied another in a low voice. "Why else would he give such an important position to someone so inexperienced?" Emily felt the coffee turn bitter in her mouth, but she maintained her composure. Years of cleaning rooms while studying had taught her the art of invisibility. Now that skill was proving useful in a completely different way. Back in her temporary office, Emily was reviewing documents for the next day's meeting when she noticed something strange. The financial projections seemed different from those she had prepared in Miami. Crucial numbers had been altered, subtle changes that could compromise the entire presentation. Her first impulse was to confront Victoria, but years of silent observation had taught her that some battles require strategy, not direct confrontation. Instead, she spent the entire night redoing the calculations, preparing an alternative presentation, and more importantly, documenting each discrepancy found. The next morning, the meeting room of Boston's Historic Preservation Department was packed. Local authorities, architects, and consultants awaited the palace's presentation. Victoria arrived first, distributing smiles and greetings in fluent German, clearly in her element. Emily entered soon after, carrying not only her folder with the corrected documents, but also something no one expected, a three-dimensional digital model of the project, which she had developed during the night. When the lights went out for her presentation, she not only talked about historic preservation, she showed in impressive detail how each original element of the building would be respected and valued. "As you can see," she explained in perfect German, "our proposal isn't just to preserve the past, but to give it a new purpose, keeping Boston's history alive while creating something new and extraordinary." The eyes of those present shone before the holographic projections, and even the most skeptical began to ask enthusiastic questions. Victoria, seated at the back of the room, maintained an unreadable expression, but her fingers drumming on the table betrayed her unease. At the end of the presentation, the director of the preservation department approached Emily. "Impressive. Frau Sanders, your attention to historical details is remarkable. We rarely see such a deep understanding of the cultural significance of our buildings." It was at that moment that Emily realized her previous experience wasn't a weakness. It was her greatest strength. She had learned to see beauty in the details, to respect the history contained in every corner, even when she was just cleaning them. Now that unique perspective was proving more valuable than any executive title. Leaving the meeting, Emily felt her phone vibrate. It was a message from Miami. Mrs. Martha had sent a photo of her daughter Julie holding a basic English book. "She started classes yesterday," the message said. "You inspired her, Emily. Thank you." A genuine smile lit up her face, even as she heard the determined footsteps of Victoria Bennett approaching down the hallway. The war was far from over, but Emily had something her rival didn't expect: the ability to transform each obstacle into an opportunity for growth. The success of the presentation to Boston's authorities opened new doors for Emily, but it also intensified the veiled hostility in the corporate environment. In her office at the temporary headquarters, she watched the snow falling over the city while reading another email from Julie, Mrs. Martha's daughter, excitedly telling her about her progress in English classes. "I understood the lyrics to that. Song you sent me," the girl had written. "The teacher said my pronunciation is improving a lot." Those words awakened something in Emily. Remembering her own struggles the night studying alone, the doors closed due to lack of opportunities, an idea began to take shape in her mind. She took her notebook and began making frantic notes, sketching a project that could change the lives of many women. Her concentration was interrupted by knocks on the door. It was Klaus Schmidt, one of the senior architects of the project, who had previously shown skepticism about her abilities. "Frau Sanders," he began, his tone surprisingly respectful, "I must admit that your vision for the preservation of the historic building is exceptional. I would like to discuss some additional ideas for the project." For the next hour, Emily and Klaus pored over plans and projects, discussing possibilities that merged German tradition with touches of American hospitality. The initial barrier of distrust was beginning to dissolve through working together. "You know," Klaus commented as he collected his documents, "some of us judged you prematurely. I apologize for that." Emily smiled, recognizing the sincerity in his words. "The important thing is that we're working together now, Herr Schmidt." After the architect left, Emily returned her attention to the project she was developing. Her idea was to create a scholarship program in languages for low-income women, starting with a pilot project in Miami. The students would receive not only language classes but also professional mentoring and internship opportunities. While refining the details of the project, she received a notification on her computer. An extraordinary board meeting had been scheduled for the next day. The subject: Re-evaluation of the Boston project. Presentation of concerns. The sender: Victoria Bennett. Emily felt a knot in her stomach, but she didn't let it shake her. She opened her calendar and saw that she had a dinner scheduled with Alexander Morgan, who was in Boston to follow the progress of the project. It would be a perfect opportunity to present her idea for the scholarship program. The chosen restaurant was on top of one of the city's historic buildings, with a panoramic view of Boston Common. Alexander was already waiting for her when she arrived, analyzing some documents while savoring a red wine. "Emily," he greeted her warmly, "news of your presentation to the Historic Preservation Department has reached Miami. Impressive." During dinner, Emily presented her idea for the scholarship program. Alexander listened attentively, asking pertinent questions and making constructive suggestions. His eyes shone with the same enthusiasm he had shown when he heard her speaking German in that hotel corridor. "This is exactly the kind of initiative that differentiates great companies from truly transformative ones," he commented. "You have my full support. We'll start with a pilot project in Miami, and if it works, we'll expand to other cities." The excitement of the moment was interrupted when Alexander mentioned the next day's meeting. "Victoria has contacted some board members. She's questioning the financial viability of the project under your leadership." Emily felt the weight of those words, but years of persistence had taught her not to give up in the face of obstacles. "Tomorrow I'll present not just numbers, but a complete vision of what Palace can become on American soil." Returning to her apartment that night, Emily worked late preparing a presentation that would leave no doubts about her competence. Between one slide and another, she received messages from Mrs. Martha with photos of Julie studying, reminding her of the true purpose of her struggle. The next morning, as she prepared for the meeting, she found a brown envelope without a return address on her desk. Inside were documents that seemed to compromise her professional integrity, including insinuations about an alleged relationship with Alexander Morgan. Emily held the papers with steady hands, recognizing her rival's desperate tactic. Instead of being shaken, she put the documents in her folder. She had learned that sometimes the best defense is to let others' actions speak for themselves. Adjusting her blazer and checking her presentation one more time, Emily headed to the meeting room. In the hallway, she crossed paths with Victoria, who sported a triumphant smile. What the veteran executive didn't know was that Emily carried with her not just numbers and projections, but the strength of all the women who, like her, had fought to transform dreams into reality. The board meeting room was full when Emily entered. Executives from different countries occupied the leather chairs around the oval table, some in person, others through video conference screens. Alexander Morgan occupied the head of the table, his serene countenance contrasting with the palpable tension in the environment. Victoria Bennett was standing, concluding her presentation. Graphs and financial projections filled the screens, all strategically manipulated to suggest risks in the project under Emily's leadership. "As you can see, gentlemen," Victoria concluded with a rehearsed smile, "Ms. Sanders' inexperience in the European market represents a significant risk for our investment. Furthermore," she made a dramatic pause, "there are personal issues that may be influencing some executive decisions." The murmur that followed was interrupted when Emily calmly stood up. Unhurriedly, she connected her laptop to the projection system and opened a presentation different from the one she had prepared. "Members of the board," she began in crystalline English, naturally switching to German afterward, "allow me to tell you a story about value." Her voice, firm and serene, held everyone's attention. "When I started at Palace as a cleaner, I learned that true luxury is in the details, not just in the Italian marble or Czech crystal, but in the invisible care that makes each experience extraordinary." She then projected photos of the hotel in Miami, including one of herself in her old uniform. Some board members shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, while Victoria displayed a smile of scorn. But Emily continued, "This unique perspective allowed me to develop this." With a click, she revealed a complex process mapping she had created, showing how each aspect of the hotel, from cleaning to administration, could be optimized in the German operation, respecting local cultural particularities. "In the last 3 months, we've implemented 30% of these changes in a test phase. The results are these." New graphs appeared, showing a significant reduction in projected operational costs without compromising quality. One of the German board members leaned forward, interested. "These projections are impressive, Frau Sanders. But how can we be sure of their viability?" Emily smiled, expecting that question. "Because they're already working." She then projected real data from the last few weeks, validated by an independent audit. "Every decision I made was based on practical experience and technical knowledge, not assumptions." Victoria tried to interrupt, but Emily politely raised her hand. "And as for the personal issues mentioned by Frau Bennett," she took out the anonymous documents received earlier from her folder. "I received this today, an attempt to discredit my work through insinuations about my personal life." The room fell into absolute silence. Victoria visibly paled. "But I didn't come here to defend myself against rumors," Emily continued. "I came to present this." She then projected the details of her scholarship program. A project that will not only transform lives, but create a new generation of qualified professionals for our global expansion. The next 2 hours were dedicated to a thorough analysis of every aspect of her projects. Emily answered each question with deep knowledge and confidence, switching between 4 languages as necessary. At the end of the meeting, the board voted unanimously to continue the project under her leadership, with additional budget approved for the scholarship program. Victoria, without looking at anyone, quickly gathered her things and left the room. As the board members said goodbye, Klaus, the architect, approached Emily. "Congratulations, Frau Sanders. Your presentation was revolutionary." Emily smiled, exhausted but satisfied. On her cell phone, a new message from Julie was flashing. "I could understand almost the whole movie in English today. When I grow up, I want to be like you." Looking out the window at the city she was now beginning to consider her second home, Emily felt a deep sense of accomplishment. Not only had she defended her place, but she was paving the way for other women to follow their dreams, regardless of where they started their journey. 6 months had passed since the board meeting. Emily's office in Boston now occupied a larger space, with a privileged view of Boston Common. On one of the walls, a digital mural displayed photos of the first beneficiaries of the scholarship program, now affectionately called Project Horizons. That morning, Emily was conducting a video conference with the first class of students in Miami. On the screen, 15 smiling faces, including Julie, shared their progress in language studies. Mrs. Martha's daughter, now fluent in basic English, had become a kind of informal leader of the group. "Next week we start our first internship at the consulate," announced Julie, barely containing her excitement, "and Maria got a position as a bilingual receptionist at the hotel." Emily smiled, feeling that familiar mixture of pride and fulfillment. The program had grown beyond her initial expectations. Through partnerships with consulates and multinational companies, the students not only learned languages, but also gained practical professional experience. A knock on the door interrupted the meeting. It was Klaus, the architect, accompanied by a representative from UNESCO. "Frau Sanders," Klaus began after the proper introductions, "Dr. Weber was fascinated by our approach to historic preservation and social integration. She would like to discuss the possibility of expanding Project Horizons to other European countries." The UNESCO representative, a middle-aged woman with keen eyes, smiled warmly. "Your program perfectly combines cultural preservation with social development. It's exactly the kind of initiative we're looking to support." While discussing the details of a possible international partnership, Emily noticed unusual movement in the hallway. Employees were whispering, some casting glances in her direction. Minutes later, her phone vibrated with a message from Alexander Morgan. "We need to talk. Victoria has resigned." The news caught Emily by surprise. After the board meeting, Victoria had become increasingly reclusive, limiting herself to strictly professional communications. Her departure marked the end of an era at Palace, but it also opened new possibilities. "Emily," Alexander's voice sounded through the phone when she returned his call, "the board wants you to assume the directorship of international operations. Victoria left an interesting letter. I'd like you to read it." Hours later, in her office, Emily held Victoria's letter in her hands. The words of the former executive surprised her. "I spent 30 years building my career, believing there was only one path to success: relentless, solitary, and inflexible. Seeing someone like you, Emily, achieve not only exceptional results, but also create opportunities for other people, made me question everything I considered true. You not only proved your worth, you changed the game." That night, after a long day of meetings and planning, Emily was walking through the streets of Boston when her phone rang. It was Mrs. Martha. "Emily, you won't believe it. Julie has just been invited to an exchange program in Germany. The consulate was impressed with her work and—" Mrs. Martha's emotional voice was interrupted by shouts of joy in the background. Emily could hear Julie celebrating with the other girls from the program. Sitting in a nearby cafe, Emily ordered a hot chocolate and observed the city that had become her home. The lights were beginning to come on, creating an almost magical setting. Her phone wouldn't stop receiving messages: congratulations on the promotion, questions about the program, partnership requests. Among the messages, she found an email from a German NGO specializing in education. They had heard about Project Horizons and wanted to propose a collaboration to expand the program to refugees in Europe. The idea made Emily smile, reminding her of her volunteer work years ago. On her notebook, she opened a document where she kept her professional diary. In addition to goals and projects, there was a special section dedicated to the stories of the program students. Each small victory, each obstacle overcome, each dream realized was carefully recorded. "Perhaps," she wrote, "true luxury isn't in the marble and crystal I used to clean, but in the ability to transform lives. Each language learned is a door that opens. Each opportunity created is a future that expands." The cafe was almost closing when Emily finally put away her notebook. On the way home, she passed by the historic building that would soon be the new Palace Boston. The works were advancing rapidly, and through the scaffolding one could glimpse the grandeur that was to come. But for Emily, the real construction was happening elsewhere, in the classrooms where her students studied, in the corridors of companies, where interns gained their first professional experience in the confident smiles of women who, like her, were learning to transform dreams into reality. News of the partnership with UNESCO quickly spread through the corporate world. In less than a week, Emily's office was filled with requests from other companies interested in implementing similar programs. Project Horizons had become a case study in corporate social responsibility, and Emily found herself being invited to speak at international conferences. During one of these conferences in Berlin, Emily found herself sharing the stage with executives from various multinationals. When it was her turn to speak, she surprised everyone by starting her presentation in 5 different languages. "Each language we learn is a new way of seeing the world," she said, smoothly switching between languages. But more important than that is giving voice to those who have never been heard. In the middle of the audience, Emily recognized a familiar face: Victoria Bennett. Her former rival now ran a consultancy specializing in corporate diversity and, surprisingly, had requested a meeting. The meeting took place the next day in a historic cafe in the center of Berlin. Victoria was different, more relaxed without the defensive posture of before. "You know, Emily," she began, thoughtfully stirring her coffee, "after I left Palace, I spent months reflecting on my career. I realized I had become exactly the kind of executive I used to criticize when I was young." Emily listened attentively, perceiving the sincerity in her former rival's words. "I'm starting a project with senior female executives to mentor young professionals," Victoria continued. "I'd like to establish a partnership with Project Horizons. We could create an international support network." The proposal caught Emily by surprise, but it made perfect sense. "It would be an honor, Victoria. Your decades of experience would be invaluable to our students." While discussing the details of the partnership, Emily's phone rang. It was Julie, sending photos of her arrival in Boston for the exchange program. The young woman was radiant, posing in front of the historic Palace building, now in the final phase of restoration. "She reminds me of you," commented Victoria, looking at the photo. Same determination in her eyes. Back in Boston, Emily found her office as busy as ever. Klaus had brought the final plans for the hotel for approval, and the HR team was preparing documentation for the new class of Project Horizons, now expanded to include refugees. Frau Sanders, her assistant, called. "Mr. Morgan is on the line. It seems important." Alexander had news. The board had approved the creation of an independent foundation to manage Project Horizons, with Emily as president. The budget would be robust, allowing expansion to 10 new countries in the next year. "And there's more," he continued. "Forbes magazine wants to do a cover story about you, from cleaning to the top, how an American is revolutionizing the European hotel market." Emily smiled, remembering her days cleaning corridors and studying German in her spare time. "Can we suggest a different title? Something like Building Bridges, How Education Transforms Realities." That afternoon, Emily conducted a virtual meeting with all the classes of Project Horizons, now spread across 3 continents. On the screen, dozens of smiling faces shared their stories in different languages. A Syrian refugee had secured a job at a multinational in Frankfurt. A former hotel chambermaid in Miami was preparing for an MBA in London. Each story was a testimony to the transformative power of education. After the meeting, Emily received an unexpected message. It was from the daughter of one of the cleaners at Palace in Miami. "Ms. Emily, I started studying Mandarin. They say it's impossible, but you taught me that impossible is just a word that needs to be translated into different languages until it makes sense." That message perfectly captured the essence of everything Emily had built. It wasn't just about learning languages. It was about breaking barriers, transforming limitations into possibilities, rewriting stories. On her desk, next to the computer, Emily kept a small frame with her old cleaner's badge. It wasn't a reminder of where she had started, but rather that each person carries within themselves an unexplored potential, waiting only for the right opportunity to flourish. The new Palace Boston was about to be inaugurated, and Emily observed the final preparations from her office on the top floor. The historic building had been masterfully restored, blending classic elements with contemporary touches. But it wasn't just the architecture that made her smile. It was what was happening behind the scenes. At the reception, a former student of Project Horizons, newly graduated in hospitality, practiced greetings in 5 languages. In administration, 2 Syrian refugees, graduates of the program, efficiently organized spreadsheets and reports. The hotel wasn't just a luxury establishment, it had become a living symbol of transformation. Emily, called Klaus, entering her office with a folder of documents. Journalists have started arriving to cover the inauguration, and there's a surprise for you in the lobby. Descending to the ground floor, Emily was greeted by a vision that made her heart race. Mrs. Martha was there, elegantly dressed, accompanied by Julie and a group of 10 women, all former employees of Palace Miami who now were part of the training program. "Surprise!" exclaimed Julie, hugging her. "We couldn't miss this moment. After all, this is where it all began." Mrs. Martha, with tears in her eyes, held a small package. "We brought something special." Inside the box was Emily's old navy blue uniform, carefully preserved. "So we never forget where we came from." The emotion of the moment was interrupted by Alexander Morgan, who was approaching accompanied by a delegation of international executives. "Emily, the European Committee for Social Innovation has just arrived. They're eager to learn more about the integration of Project Horizons with the hotel's operations." The next few hours were a whirlwind of presentations, interviews, and meetings. Emily conducted each encounter with the same attention and respect, whether with journalists, executives, or employees. In each conversation, she made a point of including the stories of the program's beneficiaries. During a pause, Emily found Victoria in the hotel's inner garden. The former rival, now ally, was accompanied by 3 young female executives from her mentoring program. "We just closed partnerships with 5 more companies in Germany," announced Victoria. "They don't just want to hire our students, they want to implement similar programs in their own structures." Emily smiled, remembering how everything had changed. "You know what's most interesting? We're not just creating job opportunities, we're changing corporate culture from the inside out." In the afternoon, a special photo session was organized in the hotel lobby. Emily insisted that all the beneficiaries of the program who were present participate. The photo, which would later grace business magazines worldwide, showed a diverse group of women, each with her unique story of overcoming. "This is the true face of modern luxury," Emily explained to the journalists. "It's not just about Italian marble or Czech crystal. It's about human excellence, about giving opportunities for talents to flourish." At the end of the day, as the final preparations for the inauguration were being finalized, Emily gathered the entire team in the main hall. Employees of different nationalities, backgrounds, and life stories mingled, conversing in various languages. "When I started as a cleaner," she spoke, her voice loaded with emotion, "I learned that every detail matters. Every gesture of care, every moment of attention makes a difference. Today, I see that the same principle applies to people. Each of you brings a unique detail, a special perspective that enriches this place." Julie, who now spoke 4 languages and was preparing to assume a coordination position in the program, simultaneously translated the speech for a group of newly arrived refugees. Her words flowed naturally, carrying not only the literal meaning, but all the emotion behind them. Mrs. Martha, observing everything with maternal pride, commented quietly to one of the executives, "You know, at first I thought she was wasting time studying German. Today I understand that she wasn't just learning a language, she was building bridges." Emily concluded her speech by presenting a novelty. Palace Boston would be the headquarters of a new international training center, where employees of luxury hotels from around the world could receive training in languages and hospitality. The project, developed in partnership with European universities, would transform the hotel into a hub for education and professional development. When night fell over Boston, the lights of the newly restored hotel lit up, creating a spectacle of light and shadow on the historic facade. Emily observed everything from her office, holding her old cleaner's uniform in one hand and the invitation to the inauguration ceremony in the other. The contrast between the two objects represented not only her personal journey, but the possibility of transformation that exists in each person. The morning of the palace. Boston inauguration dawned with a soft snow falling over the city. Emily woke up early, preparing for one of the most important days of her career. In her closet, she ran her fingers over the aligned suits, stopping. At an emerald green ensemble, the same one she had worn in her first executive meeting. Her cell phone wouldn't stop vibrating with messages of support and congratulations. Among them, one caught her special attention. It was from Professor Walker, her former German teacher, who had traveled especially for the inauguration. Meine liebe Schülerin, you transformed a language lesson into a life lesson. At the hotel, the movement was intense. Teams of different nationalities worked in harmony, preparing every detail of the ceremony. At the reception, Emily found a surprise, an interactive digital mural that told the story of Project Horizons, with video testimonials from beneficiaries around the world. It was Julie's idea, explained Klaus, approaching. She said that every guest should know the soul of the hotel, not just its structure. The inauguration ceremony was scheduled to begin at 7 p.m., but authorities and special guests began arriving early. Among them were representatives from UNESCO, executives from large companies, and to Emily's surprise, a delegation of education ministers from different European countries. They want to discuss the possibility of implementing the Project Horizons model in public schools, informed Alexander Morgan, visibly proud. Your program has transcended the corporate world, Emily. In the afternoon before the official ceremony, Emily held a special meeting in the hotel's grand hall. She gathered all the female employees who had started like her, in base positions, and who now occupied leadership roles. There were more than 50 women, each with her unique story of overcoming. You are living proof that dreams have no hierarchy, she said, emotional. Each of you carries within yourself the power to transform realities. The inauguration ceremony was a spectacle of elegance and meaning. The main hall of palace, with its restored chandeliers and historic frescoes, was filled with guests from different parts of the world. Emily took the stage for her speech, carefully choosing to begin in German, moving through English, Portuguese, French, and Spanish. This hotel is not just a luxury establishment, she declared. It's a symbol of transformation. Each room, each corridor, each detail was designed not only to offer comfort, but to inspire change. Next, she invited Mrs. Martha, Julie, and other beneficiaries of the program to the stage. Each one briefly shared her story, creating an emotional mosaic of overcoming and achievement. The most touching moment of the night came when Emily announced the creation of the Horizons Institute, an independent organization that would expand the program beyond the hotel sector, offering language scholarships and professional development for women in vulnerable situations worldwide. True luxury, she concluded, is not in the walls of this hotel, as beautiful as they may be. It's in the ability to transform lives, to open doors, to create possibilities. After the ceremony, while guests circulated through the hotel, admiring the restoration and conversing animatedly, Emily allowed herself a moment of reflection. She went up to the rooftop, where a panoramic view of Boston stretched out before her. Victoria found her there, bringing 2 glasses of champagne. To new beginnings, she toasted, and to the woman who taught me that leading isn't about power, but about empowering. Emily's phone vibrated with a new message. It was a photo of the group of cleaners from Palace, Miami, all wearing brooches with the Project Horizons logo. The caption read, "Starting our English classes today, dreams have no uniform." Smiling, Emily put away her phone and observed the illuminated city. Her thoughts returned to that afternoon, years ago, when she answered a call in German in a hotel corridor. Like a small stone thrown into a lake, that moment had created waves that now reached distant shores. "What are you thinking about?" asked Victoria, noticing her contemplative look. "I'm thinking about all the women who are still cleaning corridors, serving tables, struggling to be seen," replied Emily, "and how each of them carries within herself the potential to transform the world." The snow continued to fall softly over Boston, covering the city with a white mantle that seemed to renew all possibilities. At Palace, the lights shone like beacons of hope, illuminating not just a luxury hotel, but a place where dreams found their way to reality. Spring arrived in Boston, bringing not only flowers to the palace gardens, but also news to the Horizons Institute. Emily was in her office analyzing the first quarter reports when an unexpected video conference changed the course of her day. "Emily, we need you in Geneva next week," announced the UN representative. "The Human Rights Council wants to include the Horizons Institute model in a global program for female empowerment." While organizing her schedule for the trip, Emily received a visit that warmed her heart. Peter, an American chef she had met during a charity event, entered her office carrying a small bouquet of wildflowers. "Thought I'd surprise you before your marathon of trips," he smiled, placing the flowers in a crystal vase on her desk. Their relationship, which had begun a few months ago, was blossoming as naturally as the flowers he always brought her. "You can't imagine the news I received today," commented Emily, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "The UN wants to expand our program globally." Peter smiled, well acquainted with that sparkle in her eyes. "And that means?" "It means we can impact millions of lives," she replied, standing to show the digital map on the wall, where luminous points indicated each location where the institute already operated. "Imagine how many women we can reach with this support." The moment was interrupted by a notification on her tablet. Julie was online, wanting to share the latest news from the program in Miami. The young woman, now regional director of the institute, had transformed the Miami headquarters into a center of excellence in professional training. "Emily, you won't believe it," exclaimed Julie, barely containing her excitement. "Maria's daughter, the one who worked in the laundry with us, has just been approved for an exchange in Germany. And guess what? She's going to intern in the legal department of Palace." The news made Emily smile. This was exactly the kind of intergenerational transformation she had always dreamed of promoting. "And how is your mother?" she asked, referring to Mrs. Martha. "She's coordinating the new mentoring program for female hotel employees," Julie replied, proud. "She says she learned from you that experience isn't about titles, but about wisdom of life." After the call, Emily and Peter walked through the hotel garden. The chef had become not only her companion, but an important ally of the Institute, creating an international gastronomy program that offered professional training for women in vulnerable situations. "You know what I find most enchanting about you?" he asked, as they sat on a bench under a flowering tree. "It's how you manage to transform each personal achievement into an opportunity to help other people." Emily rested her head on his shoulder, allowing herself a moment of peace amid the bustle of her day. "I learned that success without purpose is like a hotel without guests, beautiful on the outside but empty inside." The sound of laughter caught her attention. A group of new students from the program was having a German class in the hotel's winter garden. Among them, Emily recognized Syrian refugees, former hotel employees, and young women from underprivileged communities, all united by the same dream of transformation. "Sometimes I wonder," she reflected, "if that Emily who used to clean corridors ever imagined that one day she would be here." "And what would you answer her?" Peter questioned. "I would say that the secret wasn't just in learning new languages, but in never losing the ability to communicate with the heart," she replied, observing the student studying. That night in her apartment overlooking Boston Common, Emily organized the documents for her presentation in Geneva. Among the statistics and graphs, she made a point of including personal stories, narratives of transformation that gave life to the numbers. Her phone rang. It was Alexander Morgan with another surprise. Palace International had been chosen as a global example of corporate social responsibility, and major hotel chains from around the world wanted to implement similar programs. "Emily," he said, "you haven't just transformed our company, you're changing an entire sector." Before going to bed, Emily opened her digital diary, a habit she had maintained since her days as a cleaner. On the screen, an old photo caught her attention herself, in a navy blue uniform studying German during her lunch break. "Who would have thought," she wrote, that those moments stolen between cleanings would plant the seeds of something so big. Today I understand that I wasn't just learning a language, I was preparing the ground for other women to flourish. Peter, who had stayed for dinner, found her asleep on the balcony, the diary still open in her lap. With affection, he covered her with a shawl and sat beside her, admiring the illuminated city that stretched out before them. In his hands, the engagement ring he planned to give her the next day discreetly shone, promising a new chapter in this story of transformations. The UN headquarters in Geneva was filled with world leaders and representatives of international organizations. Emily, wearing an elegant petrol blue ensemble, awaited her turn to present the Horizons Institute to the Human Rights Council. In her folder, besides the official reports, she carried something special, a letter written by her first students. Before going up to the podium, she quickly reread the message from Peter on her cell phone. "Shine as always, my love. I have a surprise for you when you return." The smile on her face while reading those words reflected the peace of someone who had finally found balance between professional and personal fulfillment. "The Horizons Institute is not just an educational program," she began, her clear voice echoing through the auditorium. "It's a movement of social transformation that proves that languages are not barriers, but bridges to the future." As she presented the program's results, more than 10,000 women benefited in 15 countries, partnerships with 50 multinational companies, employability rate over 90%. Emily noticed the attentive looks of those present. "But the numbers don't tell the whole story," she continued, changing to a slide that showed the smiling faces of her students. "The true measure of our success is in the transformed lives, the impacted families, the renewed communities." The presentation was interrupted by applause when Emily announced the new partnership with the UN. The Horizons Institute would be responsible for implementing language and professional training programs in refugee camps around the world. Back at the hotel in Geneva, Emily found a surprise in her room, a small cake with a candle and a card from Peter. "To celebrate our love and your dreams that transform the world," said the note. Her heart raced when she realized there was something else in the envelope, a return ticket to Boston dated for the next day. The following morning during the flight, Emily worked on her new project, a cultural exchange program that would allow Institute students to experience different realities around the world. Her tablet was full of support messages from Victoria, now a key ally, from Julie, her first inspiration, from Alexander Morgan, who had become a mentor and friend. Upon landing in Boston, Emily was received by an unexpected entourage. Peter, accompanied by Mrs. Martha, who had flown from Miami especially for that moment, and a group of Institute students, each carrying a flower. "What is this?" she asked, moved by the reception. Peter approached, kneeling before her in the middle of the airport concourse. "Emily, you taught me that true love is not only that which completes us, but inspires us to be better. That transforms not only our life, but the lives of everyone around us." Taking a small box from his pocket, he continued, "Will you build this future by my side?" The tears in Emily's eyes reflected not only the emotion of the moment, but her entire journey to that point. The ring that Peter offered her was simple and elegant, with a small sapphire that resembled the color of her old cleaner's uniform. "Yes," she replied, in all the languages she knew, making everyone laugh and applaud. That night, during a small celebration in the palace garden, Emily observed the people who had become her family. Peter, organizing the buffet with international dishes he had prepared especially for the occasion. Mrs. Martha, talking animatedly with Victoria about new projects. Julie, teaching Portuguese words to a group of Syrian refugees. "You know what makes me most proud?" commented Alexander Morgan, approaching with a glass of champagne. "Seeing how you transformed a moment of opportunity into a movement of global change." Emily smiled, gently touching the ring on her finger. "True transformation happens when we learn to translate dreams into reality, not just for ourselves, but for everyone around us." As the night progressed, Emily allowed herself a moment of reflection. Her path had begun with a simple desire to learn German, but it had transformed into something much greater. Each obstacle overcome, each prejudice conquered, each life touched was part of a story that continued to be written, not only in different languages, but in infinite possibilities of transformation. The event hall of Palace Boston had been transformed into a true winter garden. Emily supervised the final preparations for a special event, the graduation of the first international class of the Horizons Institute after the partnership with the UN. The ceremony would coincide with her bridal shower, a surprise organized by her students. "Are you sure you don't prefer to have separate events?" asked Victoria, now her main advisor at the institute. "After all, it's your bridal shower." Emily smiled, adjusting a flower arrangement. What better way to celebrate love and transformation than together? Besides, each of these women is part of my story. The hall began to fill with women of different nationalities, all wearing traditional outfits from their countries. Among them were refugees who now worked as interpreters, former hotel employees who had become managers, and young students who dreamed of international careers. Julie, now executive director of the Brazilian branch of the Institute, went on stage to open the event. "Today we celebrate more than a graduation or a bridal shower. We celebrate the power of transformation through education and love." A slideshow began to play on the big screen. Photos of Emily in her cleaner's uniform studying German during breaks, images of the first classes of the project, milestone moments of the Institute's expansion. Each photo told a story of perseverance and overcoming. Mrs. Martha, who had become coordinator of the mentoring program, stood up to speak. When Emily began her German studies, many thought it was a waste of time. Today I see that she wasn't just learning a language, she was building a path for other women to dream. The surprise of the afternoon came when a UNESCO delegation entered the hall. The representative carried an official document. The Horizons Institute had been chosen to receive a special award for its contribution to education and global female empowerment. This recognition, announced the representative, is not only for the number of lives transformed, but for the innovative way. The Institute connects education, culture, and professional opportunities. Emily moved, observed her students. Each one carried a unique story of overcoming. Amira, a Syrian refugee, now coordinated the immigrant welcoming program. Sophia, a former chambermaid at Palace Miami, had become a human resources manager. All were living witnesses to the power of education. Peter arrived at the end of the afternoon, bringing a surprise. He had created a special menu for the wedding that incorporated typical dishes from all countries represented at the Institute. "Each flavor tells a story," he explained, "just as each language you teach opens a new world of possibilities." During the celebration, Emily received a special call. It was from Professor Walker, her first German teacher, now retired. "Meine liebe Emily," he said with a choked voice, "you transformed a simple language class into a global movement of change." Among the gifts received, one stood out, a handcrafted book created by the students containing transformation stories written in different languages. On the first page, a phrase in German written by Emily years ago in her study notebook, "Träume kennen keine Grenzen," dreams know no boundaries. Victoria, observing Emily leaf through the book with tears in her eyes, commented, "You know, what I admire most about you, your ability to transform each personal achievement into an opportunity for other people to shine." The night advanced, and the hall was now full of music and dancing. Women from different cultures shared their traditions, creating a truly multicultural celebration. Emily danced with her students, each movement an expression of joy and freedom. In a quiet moment, she withdrew to the hall's balcony. The sun was setting over Boston, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold. Peter found her there, enveloping her in an affectionate embrace. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About how generous life is when we open our hearts to serve," she replied. "Each obstacle I faced prepared me to help other people overcome their own challenges." The sound of laughter drew her attention back to the hall. Julie was teaching Portuguese words to a group of German students, while Mrs. Martha shared stories of the first days of the project with the new coordinators. See? Emily smiled at Peter. Love has many languages, but they all speak of transformation. That night in her diary, Emily wrote, "Today I understood that true success isn't just in achieving our dreams, but in creating spaces where others can dream too. Each language I learned was a door that opened, not only for me, but for all who would come after." Emily and Peter's wedding was planned to take place in the Palace Boston Garden, a space that perfectly symbolized the union between tradition and transformation. On the morning of the big day, as the final decorations were being adjusted, Emily received extraordinary news in her office. "The UN Human Rights Council approved it," exclaimed Victoria, hurriedly entering the room. "The Institute's program will be implemented in all refugee camps in Europe." Emily hugged her friend, remembering how their relationship had changed since the first tense days at the hotel. "And to think we started with basic English classes for Palace employees." The preparation for the wedding reflected the essence of the Horizons Institute. The ceremony would be conducted in 5 languages, with simultaneous translation provided by students from the program. The menu, created by Peter, celebrated the cultural diversity of the Institute's beneficiaries, with dishes from different countries prepared by chefs trained in the gastronomy program. In her room at the hotel, while preparing for the ceremony, Emily received a special visit. A group of her first students, including Julie, had prepared a surprise. Each one brought a significant object that represented her journey of transformation. "This was my first English dictionary," said Julie, emotional. "Today, I coordinate international programs and speak 5 languages. It all started because you showed us that dreams have no boundaries." Amira, the Syrian refugee who now led the welcoming program, brought her first Palace badge. "You didn't just teach us languages, Emily. You taught us to believe in our own strength." As the makeup artist gave the final touches, Emily received messages of support from around the world. Alexander Morgan, who would be her best man along with Victoria, sent a photo of the Institute's new training center under construction in Dubai. Professor Walker, although he couldn't be physically present due to his advanced age, sent a video message. "Meine beste Schülerin, you proved that true learning goes beyond words. It transforms lives." The palace garden was magnificently decorated with white and blue flowers, colors that recalled Emily's old uniform. The guests, coming from different parts of the world, formed a colorful mosaic of cultures and traditions. Peter waited at the altar, emotional, wearing a special brooch created by the Institute's students, a small globe with the inscription, "Love in all languages." Beside him, chefs of different nationalities who had graduated from his social gastronomy program smiled proudly. When Emily began her walk to the altar, conducted by Alexander Morgan, the music that played was a special composition, an arrangement that merged traditional melodies from all countries where the Institute operated. Mrs. Martha, seated in the first row, held a handkerchief embroidered with the words, "Horizons Family," in various languages. Beside her, program coordinators from different countries shared emotional smiles. The celebrant, a friend of Peter's who had learned phrases in 5 languages, especially for the ceremony, began by speaking about how love, like knowledge, has the power to transcend boundaries and transform realities. During the exchange of vows, Emily and Peter surprised everyone. Each made their vows in a different language, symbolizing how their love had grown through differences and mutual respect. "My love for you," said Emily in German, "is like the first language I learned, challenging at the beginning but capable of opening an entire world of possibilities." Peter responded in English, with words that touched everyone's heart. "You taught me that true love is like a good dish. It needs diverse ingredients to create something extraordinary." The celebration that followed was a festival of cultures. Traditional dances from different countries mingled, creating an atmosphere of joy and union. The tables were identified with words of love in different languages, and each dish served told a story of transformation. At the moment of the toast, Victoria surprised everyone by giving her speech in Portuguese, a language she had secretly begun to learn. "Emily taught us that it's never too late to start over, never impossible to transform obstacles into opportunities. As she danced with Peter under the Boston stars, Emily observed her surroundings: institute students who had become leaders, refugees who had found a new home, women who had transformed their lives through education. Each of them was part of her story. Each carried a bit of the dream that had begun in a hotel corridor. "You know what I love most about you," Peter whispered in her ear. "How you transform each personal moment into an opportunity to celebrate and elevate other people." Emily smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "Love is the universal language we all understand," she replied. "And when we share it, it multiplies into infinite possibilities of transformation." Emily and Peter's honeymoon wouldn't be conventional. They knew that from the beginning of planning. The itinerary included stops in 5 countries where the Horizons Institute was expanding its operations, combining romantic moments with the mission that had become a fundamental part of their lives. Their first stop was Athens, where the sunset on the Acropolis created a perfect setting for the couple. While savoring a glass of wine in a restaurant overlooking the Parthenon, Emily received exciting news. The Greek government had approved the implementation of the Institute's program on all its islands that received refugees. "I can't help thinking about how many lives we can impact," commented Emily, her eyes shining with the reflection of the ancient city lights. Peter smiled, holding her hand. "And that's why I fell in love with you. Your heart is always open. To transform each opportunity into something greater than ourselves." The next morning, before departing for their next destination, they visited a refugee camp on the outskirts of Athens. There, Emily met Yasmin, a young Syrian woman who had learned Greek and English through the Institute's pilot program. "Before the Institute, I felt invisible," shared Yasmin in fluent English. "Now I work as an interpreter and help other women find their voice." The next stop was Istanbul, where the Institute was establishing a partnership with local universities. Between visits to Hagia Sophia and the Grand Bazaar, Emily and Peter participated in the inauguration of a new training center. "This space will be more than a language school," announced Emily during the ceremony, alternating between Turkish and English. "It will be a place where dreams gain wings through education." Peter, who had prepared a special buffet for the event, incorporating local flavors with international techniques, proudly watched his wife captivating the audience. His social gastronomy program would now be integrated into the Institute's curriculum, offering another tool for empowerment. In Dubai, their third stop, the contrast between tradition and modernity served as a backdrop for a significant moment. The Institute had been invited to develop a specific program for Emirati women who wished to work in the international market. During a romantic dinner in the desert, under a starry sky, Emily shared her reflections with Peter. "It's amazing how each culture teaches us a new way of seeing the world. Each language I learn shows me a new perspective of love and understanding." The trip continued to Singapore, where the Institute was establishing its first technological hub. The city-state would be the development center for a digital platform that would allow reaching students in remote areas. "Just imagine," explained Emily during a presentation to local investors, "a woman in a small village in India will be able to access language classes and professional mentoring through her cell phone." Peter, who had become not only her husband, but an active partner in the Institute's projects, added, "And through the digital gastronomy program, we'll be able to preserve and share culinary traditions, creating entrepreneurship opportunities." The last stop was Tokyo, where the contrast between the hustle of the city and the serenity of the temples provided unique moments of reflection. In a traditional garden, while participating in a tea ceremony, Emily received a message from Victoria. "The World Bank approved. We'll receive funding to expand the program to 50 more countries in the next 3 years." The news was extraordinary, but at that moment, Emily was more touched by something she had witnessed earlier. During a visit to a local training center, an elderly Japanese lady approached her. "My granddaughter is in the program," she said through an interpreter. "For the first time in generations, the women of our family can dream beyond traditional expectations." At night, in their room overlooking Mount Fuji, Emily and Peter planned the next steps. These weren't just couple plans, but shared dreams of global transformation. "You know what I love most about our story," reflected Peter as they admired the night view. "How we transformed our honeymoon into a journey of purpose without losing the magic of romance." Emily smiled, nestling in his arms. "Each place we visited, each person we met, each story we heard, it all becomes part of our love. A love that grows when shared." In her travel diary, Emily wrote that night, "Our honeymoon wasn't just a celebration of love between two people. It was a celebration of love in its broadest form, one that transcends boundaries, breaks barriers, and transforms lives." Each stamp in our passport represents not just a destination, but a new chapter in the story we're writing together, a story that speaks all the languages of the heart. The return to Boston brought with it not only precious memories of the honeymoon, but also a new energy for the Horizons Institute's projects. Emily and Peter's apartment, overlooking Boston Common, had been transformed into a home that blended elements from all the cultures they had encountered on their journey. On the first morning after their return, while Peter prepared a breakfast that fused international flavors, Emily organized the photos and notes from the trip. Each image told a story of transformation: refugee women in Greece learning new languages, Emirati businesswomen expanding their horizons, young Japanese women breaking cultural barriers. "Look at this," she said, showing Peter a photo of the group of students in Singapore. "They've already started implementing the project we discussed during our visit. They're developing an app to connect mentors and students from different countries." The phone rang. It was Julie, with news from Miami. "Emily, you won't believe it. Maria, the one who started as a receptionist. She's just been promoted to International Relations Manager at Palace, Miami." The good news kept coming. Victoria, now Global Partnerships Director of the Institute, had organized a video conference with representatives of the 50 new countries that would receive the program. The expansion would be larger than they had initially imagined. "We need to think of something different," reflected Emily during the virtual meeting. "Each culture has its particularities, its specific needs. We can't simply replicate the same model everywhere." That's how the concept of Cultural Horizons was born, an adaptation of the program that respected and incorporated local cultural elements in each new country. Peter contributed with his expertise, developing a gastronomic component that celebrated culinary traditions as a form of cultural preservation and income generation. In her office at Palace, Emily received an important visit. UNESCO representatives had come to discuss the inclusion of the Institute's program as a reference model in transformative education. "What impresses us most," commented one of the representatives, "is how you managed to maintain the essence of the program while adapting it to different cultural realities." During the meeting, unexpected news arrived through Mrs. Martha. Julie had been nominated for an International Young Leadership Award. Her story, from housekeeper's daughter to executive director, had inspired thousands of young people in similar situations. In the evening, during an intimate dinner that Peter had prepared, Emily shared a surprise she had been keeping since the trip. "I'm pregnant. We're having twins." The news filled the apartment with joy and plans for the future. Peter, emotional, already imagined how he would pass on his passion for gastronomy to the children. Emily dreamed of the different cultures and languages that would be part of the children's lives from the beginning. "Our children will grow up understanding that the world is much bigger than geographical borders," said Peter, embracing Emily. The next morning, during a board meeting of the Institute, Emily announced not only her pregnancy, but also a new initiative, the Next Generation program, focused on multicultural education for children in vulnerable communities. "True transformation begins with new generations," she explained. "We want to create a world where children from all backgrounds can dream without limits." Alexander Morgan, who had become a father figure to Emily, was the first to stand up and applaud. "You haven't just transformed a hotel chain, Emily. You've created a global movement of change." In her diary that night, Emily wrote, "Life has an extraordinary way of expanding our horizons. When I started studying German in those hotel corridors, I never imagined that I would be here, expecting twins, leading a global movement of transformation. But now I understand. Each word I learned, each obstacle I overcame, each person I met prepared me not only to change my own story, but to help others rewrite theirs. The sun was setting over Boston, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold. Emily and Peter were on the balcony of their apartment, savoring a tea they had brought from Japan. Below, in the palace garden, a group of new institute students participated in their first class. "Listen," said Emily, smiling. "They're learning to introduce themselves in 5 different languages." Peter embraced her from behind, his hands resting gently on her belly. "And our children will grow up knowing that each language is a new way of saying, 'I believe in you.'" Emily's office at Palace had undergone a small transformation. A cozy corner now housed a comfortable sofa where she could rest between meetings, and a small multilingual children's library was beginning to take shape. At 6 months pregnant, carrying the twins, she was discovering new ways to lead and inspire. "We need to rethink our programs," she explained during a video conference with coordinators from different countries. Her hand gently caressed her belly as she spoke. How many talented women leave their dreams behind because they don't have support during motherhood? That's how the Mothers Without Borders project was born, a new strand of the Horizons Institute focused specifically on mothers who wished to return to the job market or start their own businesses. The program would include childcare at the Institute's units, flexible study schedules, and specialized mentoring. Mrs. Martha, who had flown from Miami to spend a few weeks with Emily, brought stories that reinforced the need for the new project. "I remember how many hotel employees had to give up studying because they had no one to leave their children with," she shared during a special lunch prepared by Peter. News of the new program spread quickly. In less than a month, more than 5,000 mothers from different countries had signed up. Victoria, who coordinated international partnerships, brought an exciting proposal. Large companies were interested in creating specific internship programs for mothers returning to the job market. "It's amazing how your pregnancy is inspiring structural changes at the Institute," commented Victoria during a strategic meeting. "You always transformed personal challenges into opportunities for collective impact." One afternoon, while participating in a medical checkup, Emily received a touching message. One of the first students of the program at the refugee camp in Greece had been accepted into a master's program in international relations, the same training Emily had. "When I learned that you were pregnant and continued leading the institute," wrote the student, "I realized that motherhood and professional fulfillment don't have to be exclusive choices." At home, Peter had transformed the kitchen into a lab of multicultural nutrition. He researched and prepared traditional dishes from different countries, adapting them to the needs of Emily's pregnancy. "Our children are already having international gastronomy classes," he joked. The couple decided not to find out the sex of the babies, but they had already chosen names that worked in different languages and cultures. At night, Emily read stories in various languages to her belly, while Peter played traditional music from different countries on his guitar. One morning, during an important presentation to the Institute's board, Emily felt the babies moving in a particularly active way. She was discussing the implementation of the Mothers Without Borders project when she needed to pause, emotional. "Sorry," she smiled. "It seems the twins also want to participate in the meeting." Alexander Morgan, who was present, took the moment to make a surprise announcement. The board had approved the construction of child development centers in all units of the Horizons Institute. "These spaces," he explained, "will be more than daycare centers. They will be centers of early multicultural education, where our students' children can learn different languages and cultures from an early age." The news deeply moved Emily. "This is how we change the world," she said, "one generation at a time." Julie, who was following the meeting by video conference from Miami, shared that there was already a waiting list of multilingual teachers interested in working at the new children's centers. Many were former institute students who had specialized in early childhood education. At night, in her apartment overlooking Boston Common, Emily worked on her diary. Peter had prepared a special tea with herbs that his Portuguese grandmother used for pregnant women, and the aroma filled the environment in a welcoming way. "Today I understood something profound," she wrote. Each beat of my children's hearts is like a new language I'm learning, a new way of understanding love, care, and transformation. And just as each language I learned opened doors for other people, this new experience is opening paths for mothers around the world. In the palace garden, visible from her balcony, a group of students from the night program was having a class. Among them, Emily recognized several pregnant women and mothers with young children, all beneficiaries of the new project. The sound of their voices, practicing different languages, mingled with the laughter of children in the newly created childcare space. "Just listen," said Emily to Peter, guiding his hand to a specific point on her belly where one of the babies was kicking. "I think we have future polyglots here." Peter smiled, kissing her forehead. "They're already learning the most important language of all, that of love without borders." Emily's 8th month of pregnancy coincided with a historic moment for the Horizons Institute. The Mothers Without Borders project had expanded to 30 countries, and the first child development centers were beginning to function. In her office, now adapted for her comfort during pregnancy, she conducted a series of interviews with international media outlets. "How do you balance the leadership of a global movement with the expectation of twins?" asked a journalist from the Financial Times. Emily smiled, caressing her prominent belly. "I've learned that true leadership is about creating spaces where everyone can flourish. My pregnancy has taught me new ways to do this." The Institute had become an example of a maternity-friendly workplace. Nursing rooms, flexible schedules, and psychological support for pregnant women and mothers were part of the new structure. The model was being studied and replicated by companies worldwide. One afternoon, while participating in a virtual meeting with Asian coordinators, Emily received an unexpected visit. A delegation of women from the refugee program had prepared a special celebration, a multicultural blessing tea. "In our culture," explained Amira, the Syrian coordinator, "we believe that each woman who blesses an unborn baby transmits a special gift." The hotel's event hall was transformed into a mosaic of traditions. Women of different nationalities brought blessings, lullabies, and typical gifts from their cultures. Each one spoke in her native language, but love and gratitude transcended any linguistic barrier. Peter, who had prepared a special buffet incorporating dishes traditionally offered to pregnant women in different countries, observed emotionally. "See, our children already have a global family." During the celebration, Victoria presented a surprise, a collaborative digital book with lullabies in all languages taught at the Institute, each with its cultural history and significance. "So that your children grow up cradled by the diversity of the world," she said, presenting the gift. The next day, during a board meeting, Emily presented her newest initiative, the Global First Steps program, focused on multicultural early childhood education. The project would offer training for educators interested in working with language teaching for young children. "Imagine a generation that naturally grows up understanding that cultural differences are gifts, not barriers," she explained, her voice laden with emotion. Alexander Morgan, who was about to become a kind of adoptive grandfather to the twins, announced that Palace International would create a special fund to guarantee scholarships for employees' children at all hotels in the chain. At night, in Hyant, her apartment, Emily organized the baby's room, a space that reflected the mission of her life. The walls were decorated with maps and inspiring phrases in different languages. A multilingual children's library occupied an entire wall with books sent by Institute students from around the world. "Each story here," she explained to Peter, "represents a woman who transformed her life through education." A strong kick in her belly made her smile. "I think they're already choosing which language they'll learn first." Peter, who was arranging small pots with spices from different countries in the room so the babies would grow up familiar with aromas from around the world, embraced her from behind. "They're already born citizens of the world." That night, Emily received a special message from Julie. The Miami program had reached the milestone of 1,000 mothers graduated, many already employed in international positions. "You didn't just teach us new languages," wrote Julie. "You taught us the language of possibility." In her diary, Emily wrote her reflections on this unique moment in her life. Being pregnant while leading the institute has made me understand our mission even more deeply. Each woman carries within herself the potential to generate not only life but transformation. Sometimes all she needs is someone who believes in her and gives her the right tools to flourish. The sun was setting in Boston, and Emily observed from the balcony the night program students arriving with their children. The new childcare space was full of life and laughter. Children of different nationalities played together, exchanging words in various languages while their mothers studied. "See?" she said to Peter, guiding his hand to where one of the babies was moving. "The future we dream of is already happening, and our children will be part of it," he replied, kissing her forehead. "Part of a world where love and understanding speak all languages." The Boston spring was especially vibrant that morning when Emily felt the first contractions. It was as if nature knew that something special was about to happen. At the hospital, the medical team was surprised to hear different languages echoing down the corridor. Students and coordinators of the Horizons Institute had created a rotation system to provide support to the family. Peter, who had just inaugurated a multicultural cafe managed by graduates of the Institute's gastronomy program, was by Emily's side, whispering words of love in different languages, while she alternated between different languages during labor, a reflection of how her mind worked, even in the most intense moments. "You're doing very well," encouraged the doctor, a former student of the program who had specialized in Germany. "Your babies are eager to meet the world you helped transform." After hours of waiting, the twins' cry finally echoed through the room. Sophie and Michael arrived in the world with a few minutes' difference, healthy and strong. Emily cried with emotion, seeing her children for the first time, two lives that represented the union of worlds, cultures, and dreams. "Welcome, my loves," she whispered in 5 different languages as the babies were placed in her arms. Peter, emotional, filmed the moment to share with the global family they had built. In the hospital corridor, a silent celebration was forming. Victoria coordinated a group of women preparing a special surprise, a mural with welcome messages, written in dozens of different languages, sent by institute students from around the world. Mrs. Martha, who had arrived from Miami as soon as she heard about the beginning of labor, entered the room carrying 2 small packages, handcrafted blankets made by students of the Institute's craft program, each embroidered with words of blessing in different languages. "These aren't just your heart grandchildren," she said, emotional. "They're grandchildren of all of us who are part of this transformation story." The days in the hospital were marked by special visits. Julie arrived from Miami, bringing gifts from the first students of the program, small treasures that told stories of overcoming. Alexander Morgan, now a doting grandfather, couldn't contain his tears when holding the babies for the first time. "You are the next generation of life transformers," he said to the little ones. "You were born into a world that your mother helped make more welcoming and fair." A week after the twins' birth, Emily received extraordinary news in her hospital room. The Mothers Without Borders project had been selected by the UN as a global model for maternity support and professional development. The success was such that companies and governments from various countries were requesting consulting to implement similar initiatives. "See?" smiled Emily to Peter while breastfeeding Sophie. "Even in this, the Institute is making history. We're changing the way the world sees maternity in the professional environment." The return home was a celebration in itself. The apartment was decorated with flowers sent by students and partners of the Institute from all corners of the world. In the library of the baby's room, new multilingual children's books had been added, each with a special dedication. Peter had prepared the environment with special care. The kitchen was stocked with traditional postpartum foods from different cultures, sent by chefs trained in his program. The aroma of herbs and spices created a welcoming and multicultural atmosphere. During the first weeks, Emily discovered a new way of leading. With the babies in her lap, she participated in video conferences and conducted institute meetings, showing in practice how it was possible to reconcile motherhood and career. Her personal experience was inspiring changes in corporate policies around the world, Each challenge we face as mothers, she explained during an interview for an international magazine, is an opportunity to create solutions that benefit other women. The Institute implemented new maternity support policies, including extended maternity leave and specific mentoring programs for mothers returning to work. The example was being followed by partner companies in different countries. One afternoon, while rocking Michael, Emily received a touching message. A Syrian refugee who had started in the program while pregnant had just been hired as a project coordinator at an international organization. "Ayu showed me that being a mother isn't an obstacle, but a strength," she wrote. At night, while the twins slept, Emily and Peter conversed on the balcony, observing the lights of Boston, the soft sound of lullabies in different languages, reproduced by the sound system, created a magical atmosphere. "Our children are living proof that love has no boundaries," said Peter, embracing Emily. "They are already born citizens of a more inclusive and welcoming world." Emily smiled, thinking about how her life had changed since those days as a cleaner, studying German in the hotel corridors. "Each word I learned," she reflected, "each obstacle I overcame, prepared me for this moment. To be not only a mother but a multiplier of possibilities." In the nursery, Sophie and Michael slept peacefully, cradled by blessings in dozens of different languages. Their little hearts beat to the rhythm of a new generation, a generation that would be born knowing that dreams have no boundaries, and that love is the universal language that unites all peoples. 1 year after the twins' birth, Palace Boston was prepared for a special celebration. The Horizons Institute was completing its first decade of existence, and Emily had planned an event that would bring together people from all parts of her extraordinary journey. The hotel's main hall was transformed into a space that represented the fusion of cultures. Interactive stands showed success stories of the Institute in different countries, and a digital mural displayed real-time messages from students and coordinators from around the world. Sophie and Michael, now 1 year old, charmed the guests with their smiles and already demonstrated familiarity with different languages. Even so young, they naturally responded to commands in English, German, Portuguese, Spanish, and French, a reflection of the multicultural environment in which they were growing up. "It's incredible how they already understand so many languages," commented Mrs. Martha, now global coordinator of the mentoring program for mothers. "But the most beautiful thing is to see how they make no distinction between people, no matter where they come from." The celebration began with a touching ceremony. Julie, who had become an international leader in transformative education, presented a documentary about the history of the Institute. The images showed Emily in her cleaner's uniform, studying German in the corridors, and followed her journey to the present. "The Horizons Institute is not just a language school," narrated Julie. "It's a movement that proves that education is the key to transforming realities." Peter, who had coordinated a special buffet for the event, presented dishes prepared by chefs trained in his social gastronomy program. Each recipe told a story of overcoming and cultural union. During the celebration, Alexander Morgan made a surprise announcement. Palace International was creating a corporate university based on the Horizons Institute model. The project would offer complete training in international hospitality with full scholarships for women in vulnerable situations. "This is our gift to you, Emily," he said, emotional. "Your legacy will continue transforming lives for generations." Victoria, who had become one of the greatest advocates for inclusion policies in the European corporate market, presented the Institute's impressive numbers. More than 50,000 women benefited in 70 countries, with an employability rate above 95%. "But the numbers don't capture the true essence of what we've built," she said. "The true measure of our success is in the transformed lives, the renewed families, the realized dreams." The most touching moment of the night came when Emily went on stage, carrying Sophie, while Peter brought Michael. The couple had prepared a special speech, alternating between different languages, symbolizing the union of cultures that the Institute represented. "When I began this journey," said Emily, her voice choked with emotion, "I was just trying to change my own reality. Today I see that each word I learned, each obstacle I overcame, each moment of doubt and perseverance wasn't just for me. It was to create a path that other people could follow. The hall screens displayed live video calls from students and coordinators from different countries, each sharing how the institute had changed their lives. Among them was the first class of refugees trained in Greece, now established professionals in various European countries. Professor Walker, quite elderly but still lucid, participated virtually from Germany. "Meine liebe Emily," he said, emotional, "you transformed a simple German class into a global movement of transformation." At the end of the night, Emily gathered all the coordinators present for a special announcement. The Institute was launching a global exchange program for students, children, ensuring that the next generation would grow with the same opportunities for multicultural education that Sophie and Michael were having. Because true transformation, she explained, is that which continues through generations. As the guests celebrated, Emily observed the hall with teary eyes. Gathered there were all the chapters of her story: Mrs. Martha, who had doubted her German studies; Victoria, who from rival had become ally and friend; Julie, her first inspiration for the program; Alexander Morgan, who had seen potential where others saw only a cleaner. Peter approached with the twins, who were already sleeping peacefully, in his arms. "Just look at them," he whispered. "They're already born knowing that the world is much bigger than any border." Emily smiled, gently touching her children's little faces. They are living proof that love, education, and perseverance speak all languages. On the hall wall, a new digital mural displayed a message in dozens of different languages. Horizons are not limits, they are invitations to fly higher. And so, under the lights of Boston, surrounded by her global family, Emily understood that her journey hadn't been just about learning new languages or conquering professional